Hi there, my name is Paul. I'm an acrylic pouring artist from Oslo, Norway. Welcome to my first YouTube video ever. If we're lucky, this might be the first of many to come. We'll see how it goes. Today I'll be showing you a really big, at least for me, big flip cup pour. I used 5 different colors, in total about 1.5 liters of mixed paint and a 46 by 55 centimeters canvas. Not sure what that is in inches, so you might have to do the calculations yourself. Anyway, when I've previously tried to do this, I've always messed it up. So I was really nervous, a lot of anxiety, adrenaline going into this one. However, even though I almost managed to screw it up, which you'll see in the video, I think it ended up quite well. I learned a lot from it and I got some good pointers of how to improve on pours of this size. I'll write some more about the, my medium, my colors, and probably some other stuff as well in the text down below. So you can look there if you wonder what I'm using. Feel free to post questions, comments, whatever. And hopefully you will enjoy what follows. Thank you for watching.
So, I was struggling a bit to find a perfect container. So I used this sort of storage box for pasta and stuff that takes 1.6 liters. You can see my partner filming from the side. He was quite excited as well. And I made quite a fuss about it. So, what you see, because the container is square, as the last paint was coming out of it, it dripped on the right side in a not so charming way. So I'm going to see if I can find a proper size round containers to do these bigger flip cups in the future. I'm adding some paint to the corners to make it wet, so the paint slides off the corner more easily. Otherwise you can waste quite a lot of paint when you're trying to pour off the canvas to cover the corners. So here comes any minute now my trusty corner guard, which I normally use to fill out the canvas. So you can kind of move the paint around without too much sliding off the edges, so that when you're ready to further tilt and form the picture, you have more paint. But, oops, so annoyed at that point. What happened was the canvas was quite heavy. I guess it's about 2 kilos. So trying to lift from one corner with the corner guard didn't hold it tight enough, so it slipped and ended up in the middle of the painting. But fortunately there's enough paint so I can tilt off most of the mess I was making. So here I'm just moving the paint towards the edges to cover most of the canvas before I start tilting off paint. And you can see the cells that have formed already. They're purely from the silicone added to the paints. So just tilting really slowly. And the way both the kind of velocity, like how fast you tilt and the direction you tilt, it will have an impact on how the cells form and how they end up in the end. So I would highly recommend careful tilting. Because I had to get rid of the mess on the kind of right hand side of the canvas, some of my original or initial silicone cells, they end up a bit overstretched and wonky. I'm not a huge fan of that normally, but in this case it wasn't too bad, so I decided to just go for it and kind of live with the results. But you'll see they'll go a bit kind of bent after a while. So at this point I'm thinking 2/3 of the canvas looks good, but I need to cover the top right part, and I want to try and tilt off the more messy looking right hand side of the canvas. At this point I'm just cleaning my hands a bit so that I can find my torch. So I try to torch like really carefully. If you go full on too close to the canvas, you will just have a massive explosion of cells, and I don't want the entire canvas covered in cells. So I try to be careful. I'm not as careful as I would like to be, so I end up with slightly more cells, bigger clusters than I prefer. You'll see how that goes. The reason I'm doing this at this point in this pour is because I want to, when I go to tilt off the right part of the canvas, the messy looking bit, I want the cells to have formed so that that will contribute to the stretching. Normally, if I didn't have this messy part on the right hand side, I would tilt and cover the entire canvas before torching and then start stretching the cells. But at this point I'm afraid I won't have enough paint left on the canvas after this tilting to get rid of the mess. So I torch and create the cells before I go to remove the messy bits. Okay, wanted a few more cells. I'm staying off that kind of round band of colors at the bottom because I think that looks quite nice with the gold and the silver and the dark brown. Okay, so I'm showing you where I want to move the paint to get rid of the bits I don't like and at the same time cover the entire canvas. When you're doing this, patience is definitely a virtue. Carefully tilting to slowly move the paint toward the edge, and at the same time trying to keep an eye on the cells and how they stretch when the paint is moved. With this big canvas and this much paint, I guess the whole thing weighs about 2 kilos. It's quite an effort actually. My arm strength is not the best, to say the least. My partner was saying that this would be perfect training for a survivor challenge. So I'm definitely going for the immunity idol right here. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. Tilt it the other way to keep the paint on the canvas. Starting to move it towards the top. It's so easy and so tempting to go too fast when you do this kind of thing. I've ruined, I don't know how many pours, how many paintings, by going too fast on this part. I always beat myself up after. Doing a fairly decent job patience-wise here though. Let's see. Oh, and that's the top as well. So now I start moving the paint back towards the middle of the canvas. Trying to keep the shape of the topmost cells running off the canvas. See if I can stretch those elongated ones back into shape. But slowly realizing that that's not going to happen. So you see the silver one just to the left of the middle. I would have loved that to be straighter and a bit more plump, but we're getting close to the point where I don't dare to stretch anymore, because if I do, I'm going to ruin something else. So yeah, this is where I stop. That's another thing by doing this, which sort of gets better with experience, but you have to know when to stop. Realize that just going further is going to make it worse rather than better. Okay, so time to scrape the edges, because there will be paint dripping down on all sides of the canvas. So I try to scrape off as much as I can, and at the same time check all the corners to make sure that they are covered in paint. Because even though it looks like the paint runs over the corner, the tip of it might still be left white, which it was in this case in the top right corner. You see I'm doing that now, covering it in paint. It's so annoying doing a pour, leaving it, coming back when it's dry, and then realizing that you've left one or more corners all white I mean, you can always paint them after with one of the colours you've used in the actual pour, so it's not like a big issue, but I find it looks better if you do it at the end of your painting process rather than coming back to it at some other point. Another thing about this one, you can't actually see it in the video, but my table is up against a wall, so I have no idea. I mean, my hand right there is touching the wall, so there's not much space. So I have no idea how the top edge of the canvas looks, and I won't find out in, I guess, another couple of days until it's dry and I can move it. So right now I'm just crossing my fingers, hoping there are no big white spots on the top there. If so, I'll have to go over it with a brush carefully and see if I can match it. So here's the final painting. I used an app called Voon on my iPhone to make the frame. Feel free to leave comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.